logizame gar oti uk axia ta pathemata tu nun keru prostain melusan doxan apakaluthene is emas. For I consider that not worthy, and so that is giving the content of the logizomai, and gar indicates strengthening. So this is supporting what was just said, and the reason he's supporting it is because verse 17 talked about us being co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with him, in order that also we be glorified with him. So there's like a two-step process that that we have in relationship to Christ. And this two-step process actually is found at the end of Luke, when Jesus is explaining in Luke 24, explaining to the disciples that it was necessary for the Christ to suffer before entering his glory. And then Peter talks about suffering before entering the glory. So there's this understanding that we need to suffer now. You know, as we identify with Christ, we suffer, but we're also going to be glorified. So we're suffering with Christ, but we will be glorified with him. And so this, in verse 18, Paul is substantiating, supporting why he views the suffering now as worth it. And he says, I consider that. And then we get the content of the consideration. The oti indicates the content. Now, what's found in the rest of it is a verbless clause. So there's no verb in no main verb in the oti clause. And what we have is a predicate adjective construction. The sufferings are not worthy. So axia is from axios, adjective, axios, axia, axion, to be worthy, or worthiness, worthy. It's worthy, yeah, adjective. So not worthy, and it's plural in agreement with ta pathemata. So the sufferings are not worthy. Now we're going to get further. That's the main sentence. The main sentence. The sufferings are not worthy. Now we're going to get a further description of the sufferings. The sufferings has a genitive modifier, tu nun keru, of the time, of the now time, of the now time. And so, what? The noon is an adverb, but it's functioned like an adjective.
I thought you were saying like translating, you know, like the difference between
Keros and chronos. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that he uses Keros here, because Keros is more like a season, like a fruitful or productive season, or an opportunity sometimes. And it's almost like he's saying, this is the time. It's a season, it's limited, but it's also an opportunity time for us to suffer in the right kind of way. Our present sufferings, the sufferings of the present time, are not worthy, are not, and really there's some sense of comparison here. Now that's implied in the construction. Pros, not worthy to the about to be revealed glory. So that's kind of a mouthful. So you have, this is kind of hard to unpack, but you have a pros tain doxan, to the glory. So are not worthy to the glory, but the glory is being modified by a melusan. Now melusan is agreeing with it, gender, number, case, and that's actually a participle. That's why it's in red. red marks in my color coding marks a non-indicative mood verb. So melusan is feminine, accusative singular. Yeah. So it's got the on ending, which is accusative feminine singular. The us is the participle ending, the feminine coupling syllable for the participle from mellow. And mellow means about to. And it actually takes an infinitive to complete its meaning. This verb often takes the infinitive to complete its meaning. So now that's why we have this infinitive, and it's a big gnarly infinitive, and it's aorist passive infinitive, to be revealed. It's from the verb apokolupto, to reveal, and now it's put into aorist passive, to be revealed. So all together you have to the glory, about to be revealed, and then you have the direction of that revelation of glory to us or into us. I mean, the to us or into us is interesting. I would have expected N in us, but it's almost like a phenomenon that's going to be given for into us. So it's the east may be marking up, like sometimes east is replacing N. And people will say that in the language, but I think what's happening is that they're stressing something. So east is ramping up the N. So it's marking direction, and maybe here it's even stressing in the inward nature of the glory that's going to be revealed into us. We're going to be reanimated in our bodies, so there's going to be something to be happening inside of us. So I think it's interesting to think about the prepositional options and what's implied or construed by one as opposed to the other. So Paul, he says altogether, for I consider that the sufferings of the present time are not worthy to imply be compared to the about to be revealed glory into us or in us. All right.
Mellow.
Yeah.
I feel like there is a most. There's a way that we see that verb that's used. It's almost most common, but I can't remember what it is.
So it's hard to formulate a question then. It usually takes the infinitive. It usually is something is signaling something that's going to happen in the future. Yeah, it often takes an infinitive.
I mean, do you recall how mellow is formed most often?
Mellow. Well, it'd be a liquid verb because it ends with lambda, mu, nu, or rho, and so it's going to cause it to do some things different when a sigma is added to it. It normally takes an infinitive to complete its meaning.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I can think of right now. Okay, how about verse 19? Anyone want to read verse 19?
Yeah, I can.
All right. Welcome, Andy. I see you there.
All right.
Hi.
Hagar. Apokar. Apo. Paradoxia. Tes. Sales. Sales. Ten. Apocalypse. Ton Yan Tunteo. Apex.
Okay. Agar apokaradokia tes ktiseos ten apokalupsin ton huion tu theou apekdekete. All right. So how do we translate that?
Okay, so For the expectation of creation, something I have to figure out how that works together. So for the expectation of creation,
So there's the subject, the expectation of creation.
yeah,
Then you have accusative.
yeah, I just
Then you're looking for a verb, which is the very last word.
that's what I was doing in my brain. I was like, okay, this is accusative. Where's the verb?
Mm-hmm.
For the expectation of the creation, and then after so okay. For the expectation of creation, um,
So op ek
Waits.
decative. Hi, Stephanie. Means awaits.
yeah, for the expectation of creation waits the and then
Chain apocalypsine.
the revelation of
Yeah.
the Son of God.
Of the sons of God. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the eager expectation. This is an interesting word. It's from apo, and then kara means head, and then dokia is from dokeo, which means to think or just to imagine. So it's almost like the eager imagination of creation awaits the revelation of the sons of God, which is it's really interesting way to think of it. The imagination of the mind from that it's personifying creation, that creation has an imagination. So creation, I think what this signifies is that creation like knows something is wrong and anticipates that there's going to be a fix. It's almost like when you make something and it's not working, that thing is not happy with it not working, right? It's meant to be working properly. So, I mean, as the world is messed up, as we've messed up the world, like it bears consequences of that. And it's like, this is not meant to be this way.
Who are the sons of God?
The revelation of the sons of God, I think that's a good question. I think he's been talking about family, and that we have received, like in verse 15, we've not received a spirit of slavery for fear, but we've received a spirit of adoption, huiothesias. And huiothesias in the middle of 15 is the word for adoption. You can see that it literally means to set as son. It's got the root from tithemi, or placing, thesis, placing, which is from tithemi, and then huios on the front, which is son. So the placing of a son. So unfortunately, the language is sexist. I mean, it's favoring male genderhood, but the point is more like
Is it really
official. I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. It's accommodating. It's accommodating the culture in a sense.
Because I mean,
Because there's sons and then there's daughters.
yeah, but like even like for example, when James says like Adelpho and Mu or Adelphos and Mu, like he's not. I don't think he's specifically referring to like male brothers. He's using familiar language.
Yeah, he's using familiar language, but there was also the option to use adelphia, like or to use, I think, other terms. And certainly with huios, there is a thugater, there is the word daughter, and Paul in 2 Corinthians does specify sons and daughters. So you're right in a sense, it's like a shorthand, and it implies gender inclusiveness, but it doesn't. He doesn't feel the need to because of the culture. So we can maybe give him a pass on that, but yeah. So sons of God includes also daughters of God, and these are people who are going to receive a resurrected body. Okay, verse 20. Anyone want to read verse 20?
No, Dr. Long, I have a question at the verse
Sure.
19.
Okay.
So there are the kind of a lot of the compound words, the apple,
Yeah.
car, and then the apple car and the apple egg. So the Paul is the kind of the, I
Yeah.
don't know, is kind of repeated to emphasize something, or he just because one is kind of from and then it's out, it's kind of the, so I don't know. Did any some connection with these preposition or prefix?
That's a good observation. So what Fen is noticing is that there's three words. The three most significant words have apo on the front of them. Op. And that would have been heard. Someone hearing this would have recognized that. I guess you'd have to maybe think about the cumulative effect. What's the cumulative effect of having this apo? Is it all pointing in the same direction? I don't know. I don't know what the fromness. When I think of apo, I think of fromness. So Revelation, apocalypsis, kalupto means to hide. So the apo means to come out of hiding. Ap ekdekome means to await. Dekoma, I don't know if ekdekomai is a word. We could look at whether ekdekomai. I think it is. There it is. Ekdekome means to receive, to wait in a state and await an event or arrival of someone, to expect. So I think we're starting to get a little bit of an answer whether the apo is important, because it seems like Paul, there are other words for awaiting that he could have chosen.
Right.
And instead he chose the one with op on the front. So why is he choosing op? Is this because it sounds good? Is it strengthening the point? And I think, when you encounter weird words like this, and particularly apokaradokia, in terms of like the imagination of the creation, at this point, I think creation is being personified. So that's kind of startling. And then you're attributing to this creation apokaradokia, some kind of inner expectation or awaiting. So there certainly is kind of a redundancy too. Awaiting, the eager awaiting of the creation is awaiting. So you're having redundancy, at least overlap of meaning.
When dealing with Apple as this, I guess a basic preposition, like reference to using that over different
Well, so Emily's question is, what does apo construe as opposed to another preposition? Like, what does it mean as opposed to another one? The other one that's close to apo is ek. And x is more signaling outside of something, but moving out. Whereas from is more organically, like from within, and then it's come out. So it's more like source. Ek is more directional, like getting out. So you had it a little. Yeah, origin from something.
Separation marker.
Separation from, like it was a part of something. Ek is more out and more emotional. So yeah. Yeah. Well, good question, Fen. I think we've kind of walked around that a little bit. I think something is definitely going on there. All right, how about verse 20? Someone want to read 20? Thank you, Jeff.
Tegar, Mateo, Keti, Thesis, Upetage, Kusa, Ala Dia, Santa, Elpidi.
Yeah. That's got a lot of new vocabulary.
Yeah.
So Jeff is second semester student, and he's a good student with Stephanie here. They're really good, but this is going to be stretching them.
So Gar post-positive, it's a strengthening of the arguments.
Yep, strengthening.
The subject is still creation.
Yep.
The kage looks like the verb.
It is. It's from upotasso. And upotasso means to subject.
Okay.
But there's a weird ending because the tasso, the double sigma, the real stem of that is a tak,
Okay.
a key. And so then when you have this weird ending added to it, it changes and becomes tag. So this is actually an aorist passive, indicative. So that eta, it's a second aorist passive. So the theta is missing. The ending would be a theta eta, but it's been added to a stem, a double sigma stem that had as its origin a key, and so it becomes a gamma. That's the compromise in sound.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because it's a double sigma, right?
Well, double sigma, but underneath the double sigma is a key in the history of the word. So you basically have a theta coming together with a key, and they compromise with gi.
Okay.
Gay, the g sound.
But the eta usually would tell us that it was aorist passive.
Well, kind of, yeah. And it's not much of an ending.
I would have seen that and said, there's a consonant there. Sure don't know where that came from.
Yeah, no, it's a weird, you're like, what is, that seems to be the verb. Looks like there's an augment. You just have to work back. So it means was subjected.
Okay.
Maybe there was a theta there at some point in time. Let's go to the next one.
Her creation was subjective and then came
To something.
To
Vanity.
Okay.
Futility.
So, and that would be referring back to just the futility of the fall. I mean, of the imperfectness of.
Yeah. I'm really curious because it's kind of a new idea and it's put way to the front. But then, hey, katisis is an old idea, and that normally would be first, because when you make sentences, you want to begin with older information. It helps people track what's going on. So when you start with like a new idea, it's like, whoa.
So he's fronting that new idea for him.
He's fronting, yeah. So I'm curious how Runge marks it in his.
He doesn't. I have his discourse species up.
Oh, he puts it in bold. He puts that as topical, as a focal emphasis. So it's a new idea put to the front, which is emphasis.
So should we be looking for? We looking for a trace in the next part of the sentence that refers back to?
That would be a left dislocation. So that's that. You're not looking for a trace. Are you talking in the previous context, or
no,
what
in
follows?
In the rest of this verse, I guess that would depend on whether or not the rest is the main clause or not.
Yeah, you're asking a great question. So Jeff is asking, should we be finding a trace of this? In other words, it seems like this is introducing a new idea that hasn't been present before. And one way to introduce new ideas is to use what's called a left dislocation, where you front it with a new idea, and then in the main sentence you refer back to it. But he's not doing that here. and it may be because this is a gar clause, strengthening. But we're gonna see that the vanity, the idea, is going to receive substantiation in verse 21, I think, because of the OT clause. So it's almost like this is a tight little cluster that's supporting it, but it's a complex idea. So he's got to support it with a. So he's chosen not to use the left dislocation, probably because it's strengthening. And remember that left dislocations usually mark some kind of discontinuity, and maybe he doesn't want to do that here. But it may be that the idea of futility is implied in the eager expectation. So it's kind of, it's not old information, but it can be readily implied from the context.
Okay.
But yeah, it's difficult to unpack why he's fronted it, but it is for stress.
Okay.
I mean, it's not left it's not traditional left dislocation.
No.
So if it's like according to like categorical left dislocation, following rules, which we never do anyways in this language or any language, would it be better to just call it like fronted for emphasis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Runge would call it focal emphasis because it's new information that's put to the front. Okay, then we get ekusa, which really is it should be in red as a participle.
Is that a in present active participle with the feminine?
It is.
But
if you look in the lexicon, they give it like it's an adjective.
Yeah.
So in the history of the language, this word was used so much, this verb was used so much as an adjective that in our lexicon we just chose to say it's an adjective.
Okay.
So it listed as ekon, masculine, own,
Okay.
usa, feminine, and then own, neuter.
Okay.
So it's a weird, there's a few verbs like this that are used so commonly as participles, as adjectives, that they're listed in our lexicon as adjectives,
Okay.
but they really are participles. Not willingly.
So you have the ubala, which is not, but rather, so not according to one's own will, but through.
That's right.
That submission, because that looks like that goes back to the upatage.
It's actually debatable what it refers back to, and it's not dia with the accusative. I mean, genitive, which would be through. It's dia with on account of.
On account of.
And then it's a substantive participle. On account of the one, and there's that verb hupatasso, but now it's.
That is submitting.
Yes, the one submitting.
Submitting
it, implied. The one submitting it.
To hope, or on hope.
Upon the hope that. On the hope that.
And then he completes the rest of the phrase.
And then he completes it in the hope that. So the OT, I was taking it as substantiation, but really it's the content of the hope. In the hope that.
So you have creation and it's been submitted. So
yes.
It's not the acting agent. It's been submitted.
That's right.
Vanity, not according to creation's own will.
Yeah.
But on account of
the one submitting it.
So there's implying that there's been an active agent that
yes.
has submitted.
That's right.
Creation.
And that's what's debated is who is that active agent? Is that Adam? Is that Adam or is that God? And I think it's God.
Okay.
God is the one who submitted the creation to this futility in hope.
And it's because of that FLP that gives it sort of a positive.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So the FLPD gives it a kind of a positive spin in the hope that. also, so now we're in verse 21, otike, also creation itself would be freed. Elev thero thesete. That's a big verb form. The ending is as long as the verb itself. Thesete. That's the ending. Future, passive, indicative, third singular. Thesete. So this is the verb elev therao, to be free. I free, or I am free. So in the hope that also creation itself. Now this avte, third word in verse 21, is an intensive use of the third person personal pronoun. Normally, right, the third person personal pronoun would be he, she, or it, and then they. But there are 50 uses of this intensive use and 50 of the identical use. They each have 50 uses, occurrences where this third personal pronoun has a different, is used adjectively. And here it's called the intensive use, and it means itself. If it had the article in front of it used attributively, then it would mean same.
Is that how you tell sameness? The article?
Yes, that's the rule.
You know, I
Attributive
have heard that
position?
for so many years in my life.
It's as simple as that.
So
There's a
many
couple
years.
cases where it's like, but those are exceptions. And you should be used to that with Greek. Yeah. In the hope that also creation itself would be freed from the slavery of decay, from the slavery or the servitude of decay into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. Well, there's a big genitive pileup. Freedom of the glory of the children of God. And there you have gender neutral children. So sons of God.
But sons and children are communicating two completely different things.
Is it? Okay. One's adulthood, one's more like not adult, but belonging. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Well, because I mean, even
Sonship is adult legal age, whereas technon are not. So
I don't know. I think when Paul talks about children of God, he's talking about something different than when he's talking about sons of God.
okay.
I probably shouldn't have said that because I don't have really a great theological reason for that.
No.
I just
Choice implies meaning. Yeah, so Emily is saying sons of God is different than, it's construing something different than children of God is. And I would agree with that. But to me, it's kind of weird that he switched to a non-legal status. I think a technon. Maybe I'm confusing that with pice. So maybe technon is a generic term of legal status. But I'm glad he's made it gender inclusive at this point.
Would he change it if creation is now being incorporated into it? Or is he just making a comment about creation being contingent upon the children of God? Or is he incorporating creation into it?
Well, I mean, he's separated it out. Creation has been separated out, personified. And somehow what's happened, if I'll try to answer it this way, that God has made it that creation suffers the plight of humans, but it also is going to suffer. It's also going to suffer or bear the positive consequences of their redemption and freedom and glorification. So creation is kind of going along with what's happening. And so I think it's really interesting. What is Paul talking about here? Is he just making the observation that we all kind of see, is that the world is just kind of messed up? Even the animal kingdom is messed up.
Well, that's Romans 1. The world is messed up.
Well, the human world is messed up. But now is he saying that there's a broader messing up that this was allowed in God's plan, that creation didn't do this on its own, but was submitted to this with the hope that that it will be set free from this corruption and decay when the glory of the sons of God, the freedom of them comes to be. Yeah, so he's really he's focusing on creation here. I'm wondering where he's getting these ideas. Like, is this Jewish wisdom? Is he? I wonder what's informing his thought here. Is this coming from biblical, Genesis? I'd be curious to know where he's getting this. He's gonna go on even more in verse 22. He's gonna substantiate that. Idamen gar oti, for we know that. There's a meta comment. We know that pasa e ktisis, all the creation, sustanadzi, groans together. Ke sun odini, suffers agony together. Akri to noon, until the present time, until now. So in other words, it's not happy with what's going on. It's groaning and suffering and agony. Verse 23, u monon de, but it not only, ala ke. Question.
When he calls, starting right after the meta comment, so Gamarti and then Pasahake as the beginning of a counterpart.
Yeah, he's kind of taking it from the beginning of verse 23, but not only is this true, what was just said. So he's assuming the content of 22 is being summarized in verse 23, but not only is this true, implied, not only this, but also of tu. So now we're in the verse 23, but also, and we see this as a third person personal pronoun. We might think it means they, having the down deposit of the Spirit, we, and even ourselves, in ourselves. So what's happening here is this of tu is a intensive use of the third person personal pronoun. So we saw this intensive use in verse 21, feminine, creation itself. Now it's being used without the article to go with the subject, which is emphatic, and stated and repeated a couple different times. We, that a mis is not needed. Then you have a ka, meaning also, and then you have av tu again, and then you have a en av tus, which is a reflexive pronoun. He's like piling it up, like in ourselves, specifying where we're groaning. Yeah. So he's saying, it's bad for creation, but it's not only creation that is groaning and in agony, but we ourselves having the down deposit of the Spirit. So that's a framework. That's a pre-nuclear circumstantial participle, the tain aparkein tu pneummatos, the down deposit or first fruits. Really, I should say first fruits. Down deposit would be arabon, the first fruits of the Spirit, having. So this is the framework. Having the first fruits of the Spirit, we groan. And then explanation of this groaning is found in the ap ek dek amini. That's the verb that we saw above. that Fen said, hey, it's got a lot of oppose. So there's the verb awaiting. And then what they're waiting is the adoption, the weothesion. That's a post-nuclear participle, which is explaining why the groaning is taking place. Why are they groaning? Why are we groaning in ourselves? Because we're awaiting adoption. We don't have it yet. And then that is then followed by a comma. And what is that clause, that phrase at the end? What kind of phrase is that? Tain apa lutrosin tu somatos emon. So you have a comma, and then you have this phrase. It's a noun phrase. That's what's called apposition. And it's further explaining what weothesion is. Weothesion is the adoption, is further defined by the redemption of our bodies. The redemption of our bodies. The buying back of our bodies. So we don't have that yet. And so Paul is linking that sonship or the adoption, that somehow this adoption is not realized until we get our bodies back. Which I don't know how that compares with Galatians, because he talks about, or in Ephesians talks about adoption. But here, it's almost like he's saying it's not complete until we get that body back. We don't quite have it visible yet. We're awaiting it. We have the first fruit of the Spirit, so the Spirit guarantees it. Paul elsewhere calls it a down deposit, financial term. Here he's using arcane, that's from the Gospels, I believe, or it's like a fruit, it's an agricultural term. So you have an agricultural term used as a first fruit. I think it's a festival term. So we have the first fruits of the harvest from the Spirit, but we're still awaiting the adoption, the redemption of our bodies. Yeah,
So-
verse 23 just has lots of stress on us. Like we're straining, we're groaning.
So Dr. Long, can I ask a question?
What we have now and what we're awaiting, we're groaning in the meantime. Yes, Fen.
I just wondering, it's kind of the verse 21 and the verse 23, it's kind of the relationship. So it's kind of the verse 23 is just a kind of the intensify the verse 22, yeah? Because kind of the main verb, but still is that we need to chase go back to the 21 or 22 is a kind of we know. That makes sense?
I missed the first part. So 22
and 21. So my question is that 23 just to intensify the meaning of the 22, or just a kind of the individual tense? Because we can't kind of the maybe 22 and 23, the main verb is just the we know and that. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think how I would respond to you, Fen. So Fen's wondering about what's the connection between verse 23 and 22. I think 23, it has the de. So that de is making there's a new development there. And that new development is being made by way of an Allah construction. So the new point is that it's not only the creation that is groaning and in agony, but we ourselves are are groaning. So that's the new point that's being made, and it's being made by way of not only but also. So there's a lot of correlative emphasis. I mean, when you hear that in Greek, you got adverb, conjunction, adverb. U monon de ala ke. And then you just have the repetition of these pronouns. autu, emis, que autu, and eautus. Yeah, so that's how I think I would respond to that. So we're really being pinched. We really feel the pain of this because of what we have, but then of what we're awaiting. And we're in the in-between. We have this, but we're waiting, and so we're in between, and that's what's painful for us. Yeah. And then verse 24, te gar elpidi, eso themen. Now that's within your grasp, I think. It's kind of stretching you a little bit, you second semester Greek students. Te elpidi.
So that would be, well, so themen is aorist passive.
Good.
And it's first person plural.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we were saved.
Yeah.
Or we were saved.
Yeah.
And then it's
We were
a
saved.
dative, and it could be, my guess is it's a dative of means or instrumentation. Or
By means of hope.
By means of hope. Or it could be advantage for this thing we were saved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For towards, to, advantage.
Or cause, because of. I guess if it was hope.
Because he's already defined hope, right? We were saved for the purpose of hope, maybe dative of purpose, or by means of, or because of this hope.
And then he defines, would he then be defining hope in that next clause?
Yeah. Well, he's explaining more about the hope, because we already know what the hope is. Elpis de, but hope, blepomene, seen, that's a present middle passive participle, feminine nominative singular. Hope being seen is not, uk estin is not elpis. Mm-hmm. Gar, ogar, that which. And when you have a clause that begins with a relative pronoun, try that which. It helps you get it going. For that which is seen, who hopes. Oh, so who hopes that which he sees? That's what it means. So who hopes for what they see? So who hopes that which he sees? In other words, you don't hope for what you see. If you see it, you don't hope for it because you have it. But if that which you don't see, we hope for, we await it with endurance. So verse 25, but if we hope for that which we are not seeing, through endurance, we're awaiting it. There's that verb again, awaiting. That's the verb that kind of is tracking through. So I think what's tricky is that in English, when we use the word hope in or for something, we use in or for, but in Greek, you can just have the accusative. And that's because we have to supply that, hope for something, but the Greek is it says hope something. Hope something we see. Yeah, so I'm gonna look up elpidzo, to look forward to something, to hope for. Yeah, so in the Greek, the verb itself means hope for, and then you can have the indication of what is hope for in the accusative. So really, it might be better to gloss this verb as to hope for. I hope for, and that might help in this case because it's difficult. We're like, well, in, for, where's that coming from? Yeah. All right, interesting. Yeah. So what kind of dative is that? That's a good question. What kind of dative? To hope, we were saved in hope. I think it might be a dative of space, dative of realm. We're saved into this realm of hope because it already existed, right? Because his hope already exists, right? The one who subjected it did so in hope. And I'd say this is God in his foreknowledge, knowing that he knows how it's going to work out, but he's allowed creation to go hand in hand with us. Like as we fall, creation goes down too. But creation's like, I'm not happy with this. And we're not happy with it either. You know, so yeah. We're not there yet. We're anticipating, we're awaiting it. And this word upomone, at the end of verse 25 there, that's a great word for a word study. Like to endure. Like under what conditions do you endure? Why do you endure? What makes it possible? Yeah, it's a Christian, it's almost like a Christian virtue to endure through hardship. It almost is something that I don't know if it had broader, it must have had broader social value, people enduring through hardship, but it really is something that is found across Christian literature in interesting places.
Do we know what was going on in this time in Rome, like geologically? Like, is there any connection with the groaning? Because oftentimes, in our present context, when we look at things like natural disaster, there's a sense where we explain it as the broken. Like, people talk about it as groaning.
Yeah.
It's like, was there something that they were dealing with that would give context to why he so strongly is emphasizing creation at this moment?
Yeah, I think that's good. So he's writing this Romans probably around, I think it's 59. So what's happening? Nero has become emperor. He's getting crazier and crazier. He's going to kill his mom soon. Then he really goes off the deep end. There are famines taking place and earthquakes. So Judea, part of the reason why he's getting money from the Gentile churches and then sending it back to Judea is because there's a lot of famines. So there's political there's a soon to be political upheaval. How much is happening now? I'd have to go back and look, but I think certainly there were food shortages and famines, and Claudius had kicked out the Jews from Rome in 49 over the issue of Christus, which means kindness, but may have been a misunderstanding of Christos, Christ. So that's Suetonius, the Roman historian, talks about. So that happened, like 10 years earlier. I think there's ongoing persecution with the church, but what's happening in Rome? Yeah, I don't know. But it is, I think it could be, okay, so part of this may be, so Augustus had an ideology, he made this altar called the Aura Pacis, which means the altar of peace, pax in the genitive, pacis, Aura Pacis, and it linked the imperial rule with like cornucopia and plentifulness and harmony and peace. And so there's like a return to the golden age. So Augustus like established this ideology while he was reigning. So that's back at the turn of the millennium. And then Nero is like reviving this kind of ideology. But I think people maybe are seeing through it that this isn't, it's only the rich are getting richer. It's only benefiting the upper crust of the society. So he may be countering kind of a political ideology, which is like, everything's hunky-dory, we're all good. This is, peace and safety, and Elpis, hope was one of the Roman gods, space. There's a cult to spes, hope, the Latin spes, hope, and fides, faith. They had cults to these gods or goddesses. So it could be that he's countering kind of a golden age, everything is fine mentality to say no is really quite broken. And while the emperor is making his mansion bigger and erecting a big statue of himself that looks like the sun gods, there's like this solar monarchy theme that's being revived, which is old. It goes back to the Egyptian Ra, like the linking of, you know, the head god with the pharaoh, and this ideology is kind of cycling around the Mediterranean world. And so there's a solar monarchy. That's why when they're divinized, they're shown with the corona, with the they have like, it's like a crown, looks like Maggie Simpson here. You know, they're wearing the corona radialis. So they're looking like the sun, so like the deceased emperors. So I think there's some sense, I think if you read the commentaries, that Paul is resisting an ideology of we've arrived, and he's saying, no, we haven't. Things are quite broken, and we're still awaiting it, the sons of God. And that could be a dig at the emperors being adopted. Well, yeah, of course, being adopted. So the emperors prior to Vespasian and Titus, they were direct lineage. The former emperors, like Augustus to his successor, and Caligula, Tiberius, they were adopted into becoming emperors. And then they were called sons of a god, or son of God, the god being the god emperor, who sometimes was called a god while he was alive, or when he died, definitely became a god. And they had cults set up. In the Greek East, they were worshipped as gods while they were alive, theos. They weren't allowed to be worshipped as gods in Latin area, the Roman area, until they were actually dead. But they got around it by worshiping their spirits, which is the Latin genius, their geniuses. They could worship their geniuses, and they're represented on, like, there's a statue of Augustus. It's actually a relief, and it has a little, it's a Capricorn little spirit above him, because he was born in September but was conceived in Capricorn, which is, I'm a Capricorn, like December 15th to January 18th or something like that. So that was his genius, was the Capricorn little spirit. They could worship that. But so anyway, it could be that these sons of God is undercutting, you know, who really are the sons of God. So the more I'm talking myself into, and I'm sure this has already been, I could point you to books that would explore this in way more detail. Yeah. So yes, there's one by Apostle to the Nations. What's his name? He's an editor, Fortress. I can't think of his name right now, but there's a series that looks at ideological readings of Paul from political perspectives, and some of them are pretty liberal, but you can still glean good things from them. But I just say read them with a little bit of a cautious eye because of some of the deep assumptions. All right, well, I guess we'll pick up with verse 26. Thanks for watching this episode of Greek Matters. To learn more about my Koine Greek Grammar textbook and other great resources, be sure to go to www.glossahouse.com. We have all kinds of language resources for the global community. Look forward to having you watch next time. Take care.